Hello everyone, I'm Priyadashni Mahara, faculty at the Department of Buddhist Studies, University of Delhi. Today I'm going to discuss with you module number 13, and this module belongs to paper number 11, Philosophy of Buddhism. The module is entitled as Bodhi-Chit. Now Bodhi-Chit is the compassionate wish to attain enlightenment for the benefit of all beings. Buddhist scholars have debated whether bodhicitta is to be categorized as the main mind or a mental state. So when we talk about bodhicitta, so let us first, before we get into the details of what bodhicitta means to different scholars and what they have to say about bodhicitta, we will talk about this particular word bodhi-chit. So bodhi means enlightenment and chit means mind. So just keep this basic understanding of what bodhi-chit is. And now try to understand what different scholars have to say about enlightened mind. Alright. So when we look at this bodhi-chit, it is compassionate wish to attain enlightenment for the benefit of all beings. Now, Buddhist scholars have debated whether bodhicitta is to be categorized as the main mind or a mental state. Asang and Vasubandhu were among those. So, these Asang and Vasubandhu were the great philosophers or Buddhist scholars. So, now they were among those claiming that it is a mental state, while Arya Vimukta Sen and Haribhadra believe that it is the main mind. So we have Asang and Vasubandhu who claim that it is a mental state. And then on the other hand, we have Arya Vimukta Sen and Haribhadra who believe that it is the main mind. In his light on the 25,000 years, Arya Vimukta Sen specifies that it is the mental consciousness. If we want to attain the state of full enlightenment of Buddhahood as opposed to the lesser enlightenment of an Arhat, which the enlightenment is Nirvana, our innermost practice must be cultivation of bodhicitta. So now, before we go further, we need to see that the goal of bodhisattva and the goal or aim of arhat differ from each other. The aim of an arhat is to attain enlightenment for his own self, while the aim of bodhisattva is to prolong his attainment of enlightenment after that reaching that level, so that he can help as many sentient beings as possible that they reach that higher state. Now, it must be understood that when we talk about Arhat and Bodhisattva, the aim is same, which is the attainment of enlightenment. But it's just that it matters when a Bodhisattva seeks enlightenment for everyone around him, and when an Arhat seeks enlightenment only for himself. So, if meditation on emptiness is our innermost practice, we run the risk of falling into Nirvana instead of gaining Buddhahood. This teaching is given in the saying, when the father is bodhicitta and the mother is wisdom, the child joins the caste of the Buddhas. In ancient India, children of intercaste marriages would adopt the caste of the father regardless of the caste of mother. So, it is still prevalent, if we believe, some areas of our country still follow this tradition. When there is an intercaste marriage, you take the lineage of father and you take the name of father, regardless your mother comes from whatever background. Therefore, bodhicitta is like the father. If we cultivate bodhicitta, we enter the caste of the Buddhas. Although Bodhicitta is the principal cause of Buddhahood. Bodhicitta as the father must unite with wisdom or meditation on emptiness as the mother in order to produce a child capable of attaining Buddhahood. So this is for the background of Bodhicitta. Now coming to the definition of Bodhicitta. Bodhi, as I earlier said, means enlightenment and Chit means mind. Hence the translation would be the heart or mind of enlightenment or the heart of enlightened mind. Scholarly definitions can be as follows. We have the most famous definition of Bodhicitta, which appears in Maitrey's Abhishay Alankar, which means arousing Bodhicitta is for the sake of others, longing to attain complete enlightenment. This has twin aspects or purpose. One is to focus on sentient beings with compassion, and the second one is focusing on complete enlightenment with wisdom or pragya. So we see that there's development of bodhicitta, and this is done keeping wisdom or pragya in lines, and it is done not just for an individual being but for many sentient beings. And as we talked about in our other module, which was on pragya, that pragya is accompanied by karuna or compassion. So here compassion plays equally important role. So you need to have that compassion for every being. So Khenpo Pema Vajra defines bodhicitta as the wish to attain enlightenment in order to free all sentient beings from the sufferings of existence and lead them to unsurpassable bliss of omniscience. Now, coming to another scholar, Khenpo Sundu defines the generation of bodhicitta as a special type of mental consciousness endowed with two aspects, inspired by the cause, longing to bring about the welfare of others, and accompanied by the support, longing to attain complete and perfect awakening. So we'll see here that at the end of all these definitions, they all point out to the same thing, which means the development of mind or enlightening the mind or chit. So this can be done through various processes, and I guess what differs in these definitions given by various scholars is that they use various sorts of ways or processes in order to reach the enlightened stage, and that is nirvana. So bodhicitta is the development of the enlightened mind. Now, bodhicitta is generally divided into two. One is absolute and the other is relative. When we talk about bodhicitta, it is relative, being divided or categorized into relative or conventional, and then absolute or bodhicitta. Relative entails the compassionate wish to attain enlightenment for the benefits of all living beings and to train in the method to achieve that aim. Relative bodhicitta is a state of mind in which the practitioner works for the good of all beings as if it were his own relative bodhicitta is experienced. Now this relative bodhicitta is experienced at two levels. One is the level of not clearly knowing how to overcome mistaken apprehension, and then comes the level of clearly knowing what needs to be done in order to definitely put an end to suffering and to reliably bring about long-lasting happiness and peace. During the phase of misapprehension or delusion, a practitioner certainly has to wish to benefit others, yet he or she is still not aware of appropriate ways to help. So this is what we call relative bodhicitta. Now when we talk about the absolute bodhicitta, it is direct insight into the absolute nature of things. Absolute bodhicitta is the wisdom of shunyata. So here, when we talk about absolute and relative, we're not trying to say that absolute is arhat and is followed by arhat or is developed by arhat, and relative is developed by bodhicitta or bodhisattva. So here what we're trying to point out is that when we talk about relative, it's for the benefit of all beings around us, and when we talk about absolute, it is the direct insight into the absolute nature of things, and that is shunyata. So here when we talk about the direct nature of the absolute, we are trying to point out that it is all impermanent and does not have any essence of its own, and that is the reason it is known as shunya or empty. Absolute bodhicitta means seeing emptiness of all phenomena, emptiness of individual self, and emptiness of all appearances. Let us turn our attention to developing and increasing relative bodhicitta. So without the absolute, the relative can disintegrate or degenerate into piety and sentimentality, whereas the absolute without the relative can lead to nihilism and lack of desire to engage other sentient beings for their benefit. So when we look at these two definitions or distinctions of bodhicitta, which is absolute and relative, we are trying to say that bodhicitta absolute and bodhicitta relative are equally important and complement each other. When we're talking about relativity, we say that it is only absolute being or absolute bodhicitta that give rise to relativity, and it's the same vice versa. When we talk about absolute nature, we say that relativity is there present when we talk about absolute. So they both go together. They complement each other and they cannot be separated. Now let us see the two aspects of bodhicitta. So bodhicitta has two aspects: the mind aspiring to awaken and actual application. Just as one understands the difference between wishing to go and going on a journey, the wise should understand these two, recognizing their difference and their order. So when we talk about the two aspects of bodhicitta, we see that it is the mind aspiring to awaken and actual application. So I think both are necessary in order to reach that higher state of liberation. When we talk about the mind aspiring to awaken, it is the fundamental or the basis of the structure, and the structure aims at actual application. So you cannot talk about the structure without the foundation stone. The foundation has to be laid before in order to reach the end of the construction or the structure. So here the aspiring mind acts as the foundation for the completion of the structure, which is actual application. And then at the end of the completion of the structure, you reach your aim or goal, which is the attainment of liberation. Now there are three types of commitments. One is the king's way of arousing bodhicitta with the great wish. Second is the boatman's way of arousing bodhicitta with sacred wisdom. Third is the shepherd's way of arousing bodhicitta beyond any comparison. So these are the three commitments, and we see that they all stand varied when it comes to the king's way of arousing a bodhicitta, which is his great wish. So a king who has everything can only wish to attain enlightenment or bodhicitta. A boatsman is the one who wants to attain or arouse bodhicitta with sacred wisdom. And the third is the shepherd's way, who wants to arouse bodhicitta beyond comparison. So when we talk about bodhicitta, we see that there are 4 types of bodhicitta according to the path and level. So the Mahayanic tradition provides specific methods for the intentional cultivation of both absolute and relative bodhicitta. So when we look into the Mahayana tradition, we see the cultivation of bodhicitta in the best possible terms of absolute and relative. And this can be seen with the example or with the narration that when we talk about absolute, or first let us talk about the relativity part, it is about all beings that are, we look for liberation for everyone. And now when we are talking about the absolute bodhicitta or the development of absolute, we see that it is the understanding of emptiness, which is shunya. So the whole Madhyamik system or the Mahayana system is based on this basic understanding that all beings are conditioned and that every being is dependent on certain other factors for its existence. And now this concept of bodhisattva is coined by the Mahayana tradition. So a bodhisattva clearly defines a person who seeks liberation for other sentient beings by prolonging his attainment of nirvana. So what we are trying to portray here is the right sense of using these terms absolute and relativity in order to define bodhicitta according to Mahayana Buddhism. So the practitioner of the Mahayana make it their primary goal to develop a genuine uncontrived bodhicitta which remains within their mind stream continuously without having to rely on conscious effort. Bodhicitta can also be divided according to 5 paths and 10 bhumis. So we have bodhicitta being divided according to 5 paths and 10 bhumis. So the first one, and this division can be laid down as follows. Bodhicitta of aspiring conduct, which is path of accumulation and onwards. Then comes bodhicitta of pure noble intention, first bhumi onwards. Then comes bodhicitta of full maturation, 8th bhumi onwards. Then is bodhicitta free from all obscurations at the level of Buddhahood. Then there is also division into 22 similes of bodhicitta, and sutras mention a classification according to 80 inexhaustible, which are discussed in Mepam Rinpoche's Khenjuk. The actual training in bodhicitta. So when we look at the actual training in bodhicitta, it however points out to the practical ability to develop the bodhicitta. So now when we're talking about the practical ability, it does not mean only a prescribed formulation or a prescribed structure. What we're trying to point out is a virtuous or a righteous living is also the actual training in development of bodhicitta. So, Parul Rinpoche says that the training in bodhicitta has 3 elements. Training is the cause by meditating on the 4 immeasurables. So, let us see what these are. The first is the actual training, which is to practice taking the vow of bodhicitta 3 times during the day and 3 times at night. And the training in the percepts, the meditation on equalizing and exchanging yourself and the others and considered others as more important than yourself. And then the third one is the actual training in bodhicitta is to take the vow of bodhicitta by means of any formal practice, whether elaborate, medium, or short, at the 6 times of day and night, that is at dawn, mid morning, midday, afternoon, dusk, and midnight. So we see that these practices are to be developed at every level of a day. So equalizing self and others means recognizing the equality of yourself and others in wishing to find happiness and wishing to avoid suffering. So it is basically the development of upekha or equanimity. When we talk about the development of equanimity, it comes along with loving kindness, sympathetic joy, and compassionate behavior or attitude. So these 4 together formulate this attitude of looking for enlightenment, not just for one's own self, but for every possible being around. So it is necessary that these practices are applied according with karuna, upekha, mudita, and equanimity in the end. Exchanging self and others means giving your own happiness to other sentient beings and taking their suffering upon yourself. Now, when we talk about taking their suffering upon yourself, we are not pointing out to a stage where if I take somebody else's suffering, I would be dying with pain. So now, who takes away the suffering of others? It is the person who has reached that level where he is going to attain enlightenment. So this person does not get affected by happiness or unhappiness or any of those feelings. So for him, everything is equal. So he does not really mind taking suffering upon himself and giving happiness to other beings. So considering others as more important than yourself means setting aside your own benefit and accomplishing the benefit of others. If you apply yourself to these practices, Parul Rinpoche says, then you will never forget the mind of bodhicitta in all your future lives, and all these qualities of the bhumis and paths will develop and increase like the waxing moon. Now, we see bodhicitta, the conception of bodhicitta in Dzogchen. In Dzogchen context, especially in the teachings of the category of mind, bodhicitta is used to refer to the awakened mind or Rigpa. In the chapter 12 of the Treasury of the Dharma Dhatu, Longchenpa explains the literal meaning of bodhicitta. So we see this particular text which is called the Treasury of Dharma Dhatu. It talks about the Tibetan explanation of bodhicitta according to Dzogchen tradition. Now, when we look at the evolution of bodhicitta, there are 2 major methods. The first of these, the 6 causes and 1 effect, applies 6 causal meditation. Recognizing that all sentient beings were once our own mothers, a mother's kindness, repaying such kindness, love, compassion, and the extraordinary thought of universal responsibility to produce one result, that is bodhicitta. The second technique is the meditation in which we directly change self-cherishing into the cherishing of others. In order to practice either of these methods of developing bodhicitta, we must first develop a sense of equanimity towards all living beings. So when we talk about equanimity, it is equal respect, equal love, equal kindness, equal sympathetic joy towards every being, be it rich or poor or small or big. There is no discrimination of any sort as such. We must transcend seeing some beings as close friends, others as disliked or hated enemies, and the rest as merely unknown strangers. So this whole attitude of discriminating or of distinguishing between people needs to be transcended in order to develop bodhicitta along with equanimity. So there has to be no distinction between anyone. Everyone has to be equal. Until we have developed equanimity for all beings, any meditation we do in an attempt to develop bodhicitta will not be effective. For example, if we want to paint a mural on a wall, we must first find lamps, get rid of all the cracks and lamps on its surface. Similarly, we cannot create the beautiful bodhicitta within our mind until it has been purified of the distortions of seeing others as friends, enemies, or strangers. So all the cracks, which are the discriminations between beings, needs to be removed in order to paint that mural on the wall, which is the attainment of bodhicitta. There are following 7 causes and effects which are described by Tsongkhapa for cultivation of bodhicitta, and they are as follows: recognizing all beings as your mothers, recollecting their kindness, the wish to repay their kindness, love, great compassion, wholehearted resolve, and in the end, there's the development of bodhicitta. So, the first 6 points, recognizing all sentient beings as one's mother and so forth, are the causes which give birth to the result, which is bodhicitta. The way in which these realizations come about step by step is that bodhicitta, the thought of attaining enlightenment in the order to benefit all sentient beings from, arise and must be preceded by a sense of responsibility. In Tibetan term, which is sometimes called extraordinary intention or exceptional attitude or universal responsibility, laksam is the word. It is a feeling of responsibility to benefit all sentient beings. So here, bodhicitta is equated with laksa. For this intention to come about, you must have a powerful wish for all sentient beings to be free from suffering. That is great compassion. For that to arise, you must have developed affectionate love towards all sentient beings. So as we see that bodhicitta does not only depend on the 6 paramitas of early Mahayana tradition and 10 paramitas of the later Mahayana tradition, but along with that, the other virtuous teachings of Buddha are needed to be practiced in order to develop bodhicitta. And an essential importance is given to the practice of Brahma Vihara. So once these stages, these divine sublime stages of dwelling are developed, a person becomes a bodhisattva, and he has developed bodhicitta, and he is on that path to attain enlightenment, not just for himself but for every other person. This instruction is called the cause and effect technique because the later points arise after generating the preceding points. This bodhicitta not only helps us to reduce our bad karma and mind poisons, but it also gives countless other beings a method to get both short-term temporary benefits and the long-term benefits of becoming completely enlightened. Because of the strength of one's motivation and aspiration, one is able to achieve these things without too much strain or difficulty or hard work. Therefore, the verses of Bodhicharya Avatar of chapter 1 talks about or can be stated as follows. Those who wish to overcome the sorrows of their lives and put to fight the pain and suffering of beings, those who wish to win such a great beatitude should never turn their back on Bodhicharya. So this is the whole idea of Bodhicharya or the development of Bodhicharya. I hope you got a profound understanding of who a Bodhisattva is and how he has developed this Bodhicharya or enlightened mind. Thank you.